What's up guys, my name's Liam and today I'm going to be doing an overview of the Asus ROG Harpe Ace, the Aimlab edition. How does this mouse stack up against competition? Let's check it out. Alright guys, so here we have the Asus ROG Harpe Ace, and I just want to say right off the bat that I'm really impressed with what Asus is doing here. This is definitely a huge improvement over the other mice, and I feel like they're definitely heading over in the right direction. So I had a fun time playing with this mouse, testing out the software. This mouse definitely brings you a unique experience, so we'll go over that later on. So overall, I think this is a really great mouse with a lot of potential, but let's go ahead and dive into the details and we'll go over what I found. Alright, so when it comes to the build quality on the mouse here, I am actually finding with my copy that I am getting a lot of pre-travel. And let me show you what I'm talking about here. So with the buttons, you can see there I have a ton of pre-travel on left click. Ton of pre-travel on the right click. This mouse actually does have ROG micro switches in it, and the closest thing I can compare it to, and I know it's not going to be exact, but they kind of have a similar feeling to the implementation of the switches in the Ninjutsu Sora. I feel like the Ninjutsu Sora clicks bounce back. They're a bit more defined in their steps. I feel like they're a little clickier, just slightly heavier, but overall, you know, the clicks on this mouse are pretty similar to that. You know, I felt like this mouse is kind of harder to spam the clicks on it compared to my other mice. So with that being said, I do feel like this mouse is aimed and geared more towards first-person shooter type players. And then when it comes to the side buttons here, I'm also getting a ton of pre-travel on the side buttons there. So as you can see, the rear side button and the front side button there. Quite a bit of pre-travel. So when I first started using this mouse, and you know, I was just holding it and testing it out, you know, I definitely noticed that the side buttons on this, the click feels good on them, but they just feel a little spongy, a little loose there as far as how far that you actually have to push the button in to actuate the switch. And then when it comes to the coating on this mouse, visually it has a very textured aesthetic to it. And to be completely honest with you, the mouse does feel great. I do like the feel of it in hand. The one thing I would say about the texture though is it looks a lot grippier than it actually is. When you get using this mouse and you get it worn in, if your hands get a little sweaty or whatever, I did feel the mouse to be, you know, just the material on top to feel a little slippier. It does have these grooves in the side, and I was interested in these grooves. You know, I was wondering if they would be like too much, if they'd be too indented, but honestly, they're very minimal. You can rub your fingers across them and they don't go very deep or anything like that. So honestly, they feel more like a texture than grooves. Overall, I didn't have any problems gripping this mouse or anything like that during my play style. So overall, I would say it feels pretty good in that regard. When it comes to the actual scroll wheel of the mouse, the scroll wheel is pretty tiny. And, you know, I never had a problem actuating it or anything like that. But if you were to compare it to a mouse like the GPRO Superlight, you can see there that it sticks up quite a bit more. And it's, you know, it's just kind of easier just to reach over and grab. I'm not saying that I had any issues with this or anything like that, but the scroll wheel is a lot smaller. And overall, the feel of it, I'm not sure if you can even really hear it. It almost feels like it's rubberized. Like, I don't know if it's the encoder on here or what, but it definitely has more of like it has more like a rubberized type of a scroll wheel feeling, as opposed to something that feels like clicky and has more defined steps on something like the GPRO Superlight. So moving to the bottom of the mouse, the stock feet that it comes with, they are kind of slower. They're definitely not bad by any means, but they're definitely some of the slower type of PTFE skates out there on the market. The closest thing that I can think of that they feel to is they do kind of feel like stock Razer skates, and it actually does come with an extra set of skates here, and it does give you the bigger skate towards the bottom. So pretty much a pretty identical setup to the Razer V2 Pro if you were to go and throw this bottom skate on. But overall, the skates, I had no problem with anything like that. They felt great in gameplay. So when it comes to sensor, this is basically a variant of the 3399. Top tier sensor, great specs. I had no problems with, you know, any feeling like tracking or anything like that. One thing I do want to stress about the sensor, and I didn't get a chance to watch every review on this mouse before I picked it up, but from the people that I did watch, I think Boardsy is the only person that really made a really small mention of it. But what I felt like when I first started using this mouse, it felt completely different to me. I play at 800 DPI, and I made sure I had the mouse set to 800 DPI, and I was moving the mouse around and it just felt so much slower to me, and I couldn't figure out, I'm like, what is going on? I was like, because one of the things that this mouse advertises is how great and how accurate the DPI is over all the other mice. So I was like thinking to myself, are the other mice just that off or something? And then I realized what the issue was. So if you were to take the Logitech G Pro here and you were to line these mice up in the bottom like that, now check this out. Look how much lower the sensor is on the Harpe Ace. And, you know, let me see here. Let me try and get that more even to the bottom. I definitely noticed how low the sensor is. I thought it was a huge difference to me. So let's say that we line up the HTX, okay? Like that. Look how much higher the sensor is on the HTX. So not saying that it's a deal breaker or a game changer or anything like that, but this is definitely something that I was kind of taken back by. And again, when I first started playing with it, the one thing you have to realize about this mouse is really long. I would say this mouse feels longer than just about any other mouse out that I've tested. And we'll get into the shape later on. You know, once you really get in on the mouse here, it's kind of got the mid hump like the G Pro, and then it tapers off slowly, almost has a second hump here before it aggressively jumps down. But jumping up and grabbing the mouse like normal, I was holding it something like this, kind of doing like almost like a palm relaxed claw type style grip. And then if you look here, the sensor is basically under where I was putting my thumb. So again, not a deal breaker or anything like that. I'm surprised that people didn't stress on that more. Not that it's an issue or anything, but what I did have to do is I did have to adjust the DPI slightly higher to get used to this mouse. All right, so when it comes to the weight of this mouse is coming in at an impressive 54.5 grams. One thing I do want to mention about the weight is I do feel like the weight is definitely rear heavy on this mouse, as you can see there. You know, if you're holding it at about the midpoint of the mouse, right underneath the buttons here, definitely got the rear heavy there. And then also when it comes to the side-to-side balance, it is definitely a lot heavier on the side button side of the mouse as well. But overall, the placement of the side buttons, I feel like it's pretty good. I kind of, you know, I didn't have any problem hitting the buttons or anything like that. I just kind of wish that they were a little larger. As you can see here, when you're playing on something like the Lamzu Atlantis, I feel like they're just kind of spread out a little bit more, a little bit bigger, a little easier to actuate and tell the difference between the two. These are kind of, you know, if you look at my thumb here, these are kind of tinier, and they are pretty close together. So, you know, there's a time where I accidentally hit both of them, but, you know, not a major issue or anything like that. Just some things, you know, that perhaps they could fine tune in the future, something like that. But, you know, aside from that, you know, I honestly, I really enjoyed this mouse. I thought it was great. When I first looked into this mouse, I was kind of nervous about it. And the reason I was nervous about it is, for those of you that watch my channel, I'm not necessarily so much a fan of the GPRO Superlight. It is a little bit on the longer side. The one issue I feel like there is with this mouse is, even though I felt like it felt comfortable, I don't feel like this mouse is very suitable to accommodate every type of grip style. Since it is being so long, I definitely feel like this benefits more if you're a palm grip user. You can relax claw with this, but again, when you relax claw, it really gets down back in there. And if you try to slide the mouse forward, the side buttons are moved so far forward that you can't actuate them, and you really can't even actuate the buttons if you're trying to cruise back on the mouse like this. To where if you were on the G Pro, you could fingertip it, move back, you could still hit the side buttons on it, and you can still actuate the clicks being this far back on the mouse, if you see what I mean. Overall, though, I do feel like this is a great mouse. I feel like they put great effort in. I feel like they're definitely moving in the right direction. You know, overall, it does feel great in hands. I personally don't feel like this mouse feels too narrow for me or anything like that. Again, even though it is on the longer side, I was able to, you know, adjust to it, get a comfortable grip with it. So with that being said, I'll talk a little bit about the software. So I actually opened up Aimlabs and I tried the calibration software. And, you know, I wanted to get the full experience. And to be completely honest with you, the test was a lot more challenging than I thought, because what it does is it'll set a DPI running through the test, change the DPI running through the test. So you're kind of going all over the place. But the funny, hilarious result about the test, I play at 800 DPI. And again, the sensor being low, how I grip the mouse, but the actual DPI that it recommended for me when I was done with the results was actually 1,450 DPI. So I thought that was very interesting. So take from it what you will. I just thought it was extremely interesting that it took me from 800 DPI all the way up to 1450 DPI. And of course, as you can tell, the first mouse that I'm going to bring up here is going to be the GPRO Superlight, the mouse everybody's comparing it to. And right off the bat, I'm going to show you guys this. Now, the consensus that I've basically noticed about these two mice is if you're a fan of the GPRO Superlight and you do like the GPRO Superlight, you're probably not going to like this mouse that much. That's kind of what I've been hearing the take back on everybody. Everybody that uses the G Pro love the G Pros, mainly the G Pro. They're saying they prefer the shape of the G Pro over this mouse. Me, on the other hand, I never really necessarily liked the G Pro Superlight. The shape of it, I just kind of felt like it was too potatoey, too bubbly. I felt like the mid hump was a little too high for me. And I felt like this mouse came in and, you know, it kind of offered a difference to that. One being that the middle hump on this mouse is lower than on the G Pro Superlight, so that was a change that I liked. And then another thing is it's got that slow taper. I feel like it tapers off a bit slower than the G Pro Superlight, but the G Pro Superlight kind of has that second hump here almost before it aggressively tapers off. This does the same thing, but I feel like the hump's lower in the middle and the hump in the back is kind of higher here. Overall, when you're holding the mouse in hands, you know, this kind of feels like a flatter overall experience, which is, you know, kind of what I lean towards and I'm used to. The G Pro Superlight does feel a bit wider, and typically I like wider mouse, but overall, you know, I do like the feel of this mouse. I do like it does, as you can see, it tapers off pretty aggressively towards the front there. Not that I ever got my hands to the front of the mouse with how I grip it, but it kind of just feels like a flatter mouse with a little bit more of an emphasis on the rear hump there. And as far as the weight goes, I do feel like the balancing does feel better on the Superlight. So 62 grams versus the 54 grams. So quite a bit of difference in actual weight on the scale there. When it comes to the overall feeling of these mice, they don't feel a whole lot different. I mean, you can slightly tell this one feels a little bit heavier, but definitely not a huge difference by how they both feel to me. Part of the issue could be just because they're larger mice. And again, I do feel like when you do have a little bit better balancing, as the G Pro Superlight does, it's a little heavy on the side buttons, not too bad, but it does have phenomenal front to back balance. All right, so next up on the list, we got the Razer Viper V2 Pro. And, you know, I would say overall, these mice actually feel pretty similar to one another. Of course, the hump is more pronounced here in the middle compared to the Viper V2 Pro, and it definitely has way more of a noticeable hump in the back. Overall, as you can tell, it looks and it feels like a much longer mouse. And then when it comes to the width of them, the Viper V2 Pro definitely has more curves on it, and it definitely gives you a little bit more of the pinky relief. If you've used the Viper V2 Pro and you feel like it feels a little too flat for you, you feel like it feels a little too wide, I would say this is a good middle ground between these two mice. Whereas this one feels more bubbly and more like has a hump. This one feels a little flatter, not as flat as this, but also gives you that support in the back. And overall, as you guys can tell, this is just a more narrow, longer mouse. The scroll wheel on both of these are kind of the same. I do feel like the Viper V2 Pro kind of has that smaller scroll wheel right here. Doesn't stick out very much and does feel a lot more tiny. And then when it comes to the weight, we got the Viper V2 Pro with the grips coming in at 60 grams, again, versus the 54.5 grams on the Asus. And again, when it comes to the weight, you know, you could tell this is slightly lighter, but with the size of these mouse, how long this is, it definitely doesn't feel like that much of a massive difference to where it's an absolute game changer to me. The fact that you could pick up the Razer at basically the same price or cheaper than the Asus, and it has the optical switches in it, has the 4K, the lowest wireless latency on the market, definitely starts to make the Asus a little bit of a harder purchase. And the final mouse I'm going to bring up here is going to be the Vaxee XE wireless. With this mouse definitely has more of a pronounced hump in the middle of it, where this one definitely feels lower and flatter. As you can tell here, these mice both have a very long base. So when it comes to the length of the bottom of these mice, they look very similar. However, in hand, they feel completely different. And the Vaxee has a very quick, aggressive taper off towards the rear. So that's where it really makes these mice feel different. Because again, where this one has that slow taper off and then it almost has like a second rear hump before it aggressively falls off in the back right there. The Vaxee definitely feels like a wider mouse in hand overall. You know, I do kind of feel like the Vaxee is more of a safer shape, because again, with the Vaxee, you know, the Vaxee, I feel like you can fingertip this mouse. I feel like you can relax claw. I feel like you can palm this mouse if you wanted to. So at the end of the day, you know, it all comes down to, you know, your style, what your grip is, how you choose to play. And obviously when it comes to the weight of these two, this one is 76 grams and it has the really big skates on it. I do feel like these skates are smoother and do have better glide than the ROG skates. However, this thing just feels, it's a world of difference in the weight. This one's definitely much lighter. Between these two, I did find it easier for me personally to game on the ROG Harpe Ace. All right, guys, so that's my final thoughts there on the ROG Harpe Ace. I feel like Asus is doing a great job. I feel like they're moving in the right direction. I did enjoy my time using this mouse once I did adapt to the sensor placement on it, and I did enjoy actually playing out with the different tests and stuff like that in Aimlab. So I didn't bring up the fact that it does come with grips. I like the idea that they have with this dongle. This dongle has a clip on it, so you can actually clip it onto your mouse pad so it doesn't move around. However, the fact that this is $150, I'm honestly really shocked that this didn't come with 4K. Being at that price range and Asus being such a big company, I really thought that they would have came out swinging with all the top tech and stuff like that. I mean, especially when you're putting in the price range of something like the Viper V2 Pro. And to be completely honest with you, this mouse does have a lot of competition out there. If you do bring up something like the Lamzu Atlantis, you know, a mouse that overall I just feel like has better balance, solid build quality, has a 3395 sensor, everything about the implementation, the scroll wheel on this, I mean, this just feels like such a premium product in hand. Coming in at $89.95, I do feel like the price is kind of high for what you actually do get in the package here. Whether or not the software, you know, I can understand the type of R&D that went in those types of things. Whether it's going to be that much of a game changer or that much of a deal breaker is really a decision that, you know, I leave up to you, whether you feel that that would be valuable for you or not. But aside from that, you know, I really hope that Asus keeps pushing forward. I hope they keep trying to innovate. I hope they keep coming out with new and unique products just like this one, bringing things that are new and fresh to the mouse community. You know, if I were to change anything about this mouse as far as shape goes, I probably would have just made it shorter. I do like the shape. I don't really have any complaints about it other than the fact that it does feel pretty long, but I do feel like had they made the side buttons a little bigger, made a little bit bigger of a scroll wheel, perfected the balancing a little bit more, and perhaps they could have done that by making the overall mouse a little bit shorter. I definitely feel like it'd be a real solid contender here. So yeah, great stuff from them. I'm really excited to see where they're going to push things in the future with their offerings. So if you guys have any questions or there's anything I can do to help you out, please let me know down in the comments below. If you're interested in seeing more videos like this in the future, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.